Hello, Get Better Faster Nation. I am Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co-host, the one, the only James Chester, and our incredible executive producer, Dr. Rachel Bradley. Welcome to another powerful episode of the Get Better Faster podcast. Our guest today has been called in on some of the most complex treatment-resistant chronic illness cases in the integrative medicine world. When standard, conventional, and integrative medicine approaches have hit a wall, this is the man clinicians call. Shawn is the founder of Matrix Health and Wellness, a board-certified health consultant, and the man widely known in the integrative health circles as the metabolic detective. Shawn has a degree in exercise physiology and is certified in neuroendoimmunology, neuro-linguistic programming, and clinical hypnotherapy, and additionally has advanced training from the World Institute of Integrative Health Sciences. He is a founding member and partner of the Institute for Methylation and Bio-Individualized Medicine. And Shawn's personal story is one of the most compelling in this space. A former competitive bodybuilder who experienced a catastrophic health collapse, he walked his own path through the dark and came out on the other side with a methodology that is changing lives globally. Today, we're talking about what the integrative medicine world keeps missing, why going back to breath, rhythm, and presence may be more powerful than any biohack, and what it truly means to create a simple solution to a complex problem. Shawn, my friend, welcome to the show.
Jason, it's a privilege being here today to share my information with your listeners.
Well, Shawn, I just got a chance to get a brief meeting with you before the show started, and I think that there's going to be some really cool things and some takeaways for people today on today's episode. So my preemptive strike to everybody out there, get your pen and paper out, listen to this episode as many times as you need to, and reach out to Shawn when you need the secret detective to help you with your health concerns. But before we get into today's episode, I just want to ask you, competitive bodybuilder, really pushing yourself, probably redlining with a lot of different things. And then you had this full body collapse, and it seems like that was all due to some food poisoning. So tell us about this story.
It was basically, number one, being an extreme athlete, we do push our body to limits. One of the things that I got involved with was one of the pro bodybuilders talked about getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, eating a big meal, going back to sleep, and then training at 5:30. And being a bodybuilder, what happens is we tend to have not the best lifestyles. I was eating somewhere between 10 meals a day. And basically my whole life was revolved around eating and training and just maintaining my nervous system the best way I can. But unfortunately, when you get into those arenas, you're going to be taking a lot of stimulants, you're going to be taking a lot of other supplements to get to that level. And what happened is because of the fact in trying to get to a certain state, you have to take the stimulants. Back then, we used what's known as the caffeine, aspirin, and ephedrine stack. Was basically one of the thermogenics that was used. I mixed that with hydroxy cut, and what happened was I literally was on speed 24/7. And as a result, through the circadian rhythm imbalances, my immune system got out of sync. And when my immune system got out of sync, that made me vulnerable to a lot of environmental influences, such as the sushi that we had afterwards. Now, there were signs and symptoms before because I wasn't carving up right. And because the fact is I was basically knocking out all my electrolytes and not worrying about potassium and sodium, I couldn't get the full glycogen load. So I knew something was wrong. And then after the contest, I was, I guess, about 190 pounds. And then we decided to go get sushi for 5 hours. I must have had 100 pieces of sushi on top of the hibachi bar. And I think I weighed 218 pounds in 5 hours. We put on so much water weight. And you could actually literally see yourself grow. And then, I took all the precautions with ginger and everything as I normally would. But then my digestive system started getting out of sync. And I knew something was wrong. 72 hours later, I had bad gas and just normal processes weren't working. I went to the doctor, said, listen, I had some sushi and I think I got a parasite or something. Well, he didn't believe in it and it snowballed from there. And then once it snowballed from there, my central nervous system got knocked out. Then it started to cause digestion issues. Then it started to cause basically schizophrenia because of the nutritional malabsorption was going on. And I literally lost within 9 months. I lost 100 pounds of lean muscle tissue. They said if I wasn't as big as I was, I would have been dead because it was eating off my body. Plus, I was doing 3,600 calories and doing everything right, and nobody had reasons why. So, to make a long story short, I went through this whole ping pong ball effect. You go to this doctor, that doctor, this doctor, that doctor, and they thought it was all psychological because I came in with a wad of paper showing about candida. And remember, this was 25 years ago.
Mhm.
So they were like, that doesn't exist. That can't happen. And then it's like, you come in with your testosterone level about 35,
Mm.
and they're like, oh, you're on steroids. I'm like, listen, man, I didn't take steroids for the show. I stopped them over a year ago. Okay. So I was clean. Okay. So, and you have to get to that level. You do have to do anabolics. Okay. But the thing is there's a difference between use and abuse. Other guys were doing a boatload. I was doing a drop in the bucket because I know how my body responded. And I wasn't on the more is better approach. But the thing is I didn't do that for over a year. So I came to that contest clean and natural. And you could definitely tell the difference. But the point being is once I had that, then I moved into a house that had mold in it. Okay. And that is when I woke up with amnesia, stuttering.
Mm.
And I literally had to call work and they couldn't understand what I was saying because I actually had 3 hours of amnesia. I didn't know who I was, where I was. And that's where everything dropped off. That's where I couldn't go to work. I was on disability. I went through doctor after doctor after doctor. And back then, it's like you do a test, you got to wait 8 weeks to get the results back. There was no quick turnaround. I mean, most of my clients are screaming when their results don't come back in 2 weeks. I said, try to make an appointment 12 weeks in, and hopefully that you have your results in back then. And they only did 3 or 4 tests. So it was constantly trying to figure out what was going on. So this is where I went in. I started doing PubMed research on rats and not humans because I don't know why I went to rats. My instinct said more rats because there was no political game involved. So I started studying PubMed articles on rats. I mean, I must have read 100,000 pages over a course of 10 or 15 years. But what happened is I started to develop the sequence. I'm like, wait a second, this autism, this Asperger's started to surface. And I had no idea. But the thing is I had it all my life. Even as a child, I had Asperger's. I was autistic. They didn't know it back then. Shawn was shy. No, I wasn't. I was socially isolated. I had social anxiety. I was a loner. I had all the characteristics. Yes, my IQ was 160 and I could do multiplication facts and stuff, at 5 years old that most 10 and 12-year-olds couldn't do. But emotionally intelligence, I didn't have. I didn't know how to deal with the hypervigilance. And the hypervigilance was actually from my birth. I was basically born out of a one-night stand. So I didn't know my mother, my father, none of that. I was put into an orphanage. And in those orphanages at that time, everybody was put into a big room. So here I was, 2 or 3 months old, surrounded by a bunch of kids that were rattling, popping balloons in my head. So I had to learn to survive. And my survival mechanism was based upon what could I do at that time. So it was called disassociation. So I actually disassociated and I actually created hypersensitive hearing as a survival mechanism. This is why autism is a hypervigilance. And this is why we look intelligent, but we're not geniuses. It's a survival mechanism because we're always constantly scanning. We're not observing. We are not the observer, we're the reactor. We're always looking to scan the area for danger. And this makes us look hyper intelligent, but it's not. It's a survival mechanism.
Mhm.
And a lot of people have a hard time understanding this. I'm like, listen, that child is in a reactive state. It's not in the observation state. And a lot of times this was the leadway up to where I am today, was because I was always that adult in the room trying to be the anchor for what was going on.
Mhm.
So I was taking the emotional blow. I was the adult. I never got to be a kid. And that's true because I was always one going in and deactivating everybody else and mirroring what they were.
Mm.
I was the absorber because at the age between 4 to 5, what happens is the nervous system doesn't know how to block things out. So you start absorbing, and that's where you don't filter. Okay, children are natural mirrors. They absorb stuff. Okay, this is why co-regulation between the mother and the father have to be parent. Otherwise, you're going to have a dysfunctional child. And this is where going back into what I now know is doing trauma work is necessity for parenting because
Mhm.
that trauma is passed on to the children through coherence, not DNA.
Mm.
DNA does not exist. It's coherence that's passed on to the children. That's why I was the subject because I took on the coherence of my parents, even though they're not my biological. Okay. I took on my father's characteristics. I actually took on my father's characteristics physically through voice because my father was a very calm man, but he always absorbed everything. He was the absorber, and I observed him absorb. Now, what happened is when my father was in church, when he sang, his voice, when it came out, was harmonious. I'm like, how's that voice coming out of that man? Because when he's in the present state, that's when your vocal cords start to relax. And when your vocal cords start to relax, you get a raspier voice. And this is the frequency or what I
Mm.
refer to as harmonics. And this goes back to what I was talking about breath. Okay. What I want to show you guys is something that's going to change how you look at things. What I want you to do is I want you to say, I'm sorry. Okay. Say, I'm sorry.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Now say, I acknowledge.
I acknowledge.
I acknowledge.
What is easier on your nervous system? I'm sorry or I acknowledge?
Probably the acknowledge for me.
Correct. Because
Me
when you
too.
say I'm sorry, what you're doing is you're shaming yourself,
Mm.
not knowing it. I had a friend who I said, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to say, don't say I'm sorry, say I acknowledged. And she goes back to me, she goes, what did you do to me? She goes, I'm crying. I said, what you're doing is I just did 30 years of release with you in 30 seconds. And she's like, why am I crying? I said, crying is not sadness, it's release. And this is what's not taught. Even my kids, they're not taught to say, I'm sorry. I acknowledge I was wrong, daddy. Not I'm sorry. Because
Mm.
what you're doing is you're setting up trauma, not realizing it. Even when they're saying, I'm dumb. Or I said, you're not dumb, you're not stupid. You are misunderstood. So what I'm doing is I'm reframing from even my child because
Mm.
this is setting the stage for them to remove that childhood trauma that's been put on them unintentionally. And by doing so, this sets up them so they don't have to deal with that trauma. You're cutting off, you're shifting timelines is what you're doing, which is very powerful. And I do this with my clients a lot too. And if I would have known this knowledge when I got sick, I wouldn't be sick as I was. And the amazing thing is because there wasn't electromagnetic fields back then, there wasn't all this Frankenfood back then. I recovered very fast, okay, from mold. I went to see a practitioner who used phospholipid injections through phosphatidylcholine injections, who used the PK protocol, and within 6 weeks, I went from somebody that looked like AIDS to back to benching 315 for 8, and I
Mm.
could barely do 225. And That was the other thing was, is being a bodybuilder, you also have that body dysmorphia because you see yourself so big and and that's what you're known as. That's your identity. Do you know what I just did recently? I took all my bodybuilding trophies and threw them in the trash can.
Oh no, really?
Because you know what? My structure does not identify identity no more. I don't need to be that person anymore. That was healing for me. That was probably the most powerful thing that I did because
Wow.
I do not identify with identity. I don't need trophies to remember who I was. I have my memories. And that right there was probably one of the biggest healing things I did because what that did was is that sealed that loop
Mm.
of identity.
Shawn, that's powerful, man. I think that we, on a lot of our episodes, we somehow end up talking about identity and a lot, and people getting stuck in their identity, not in a good way. And especially in, the get better faster world, there's a lot of people that are suffering. They're looking for answers. And we talk about a victim identity. And it's one of the hardest things, I think, to really unpack. But what I like about what you shared so much, by the way, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. Um, Something that I thought was interesting, because like I said, a lot of times we talk about victim identity and what we can do to like turn that. But you brought up some interesting things. You brought up coherence with the parents. You brought up frequency and harmonics and generational trauma. And why I bring that up, it's almost like, and I'm not saying it right, so you guys can correct me here, but it's almost like that's a pre-identity, that it's shaping who we say that we are and think that we are. So a lot of times in our shows and our episodes, we talk about breaking the identity of where you are, but we really don't talk about what shapes that identity. I'd love to hear more about this idea of how, I mean, as a parent, I want to hear it, but then also as a provider, as a thought leader, as a writer, I want to know more about the coherence of the parents, because I can tell you right now, it's not a pity story, but my parents had no coherence. I mean, they were incoherent with each other. They were incoherent with their children, and I mean, it was I don't want to say a shit show, but it was a shit show growing up in my household. And just like and I won't speak for James and Rachel, but we've had to kind of fight to get to where we are and then have to unlearn all that programming. And what I just want to hear your perspective on this, especially with someone that's trained, in the neuroendocrine immunology, the neurolinguistic programming. I want to hear more about that. Thank you.
Basically, what happens in that scenario is it comes from lineage. It can come from 7 generations back. And what happens is I'm what's known as a mirror. A mirror is a person who's rooted in presence and carries a certain energy about them.
Mm-hmm.
Many people that I've interacted with, 6 of them ended up going to find out their soulmates. 2 of them ended up getting married. The reason being is I'm an activator. I force you to see the shadows. And by forcing the shadows, you choose the path. You can either do the integration work, or you can just let it circle back around and become karmic. And that's their choice, because I'm just the activator. And I see this a lot in my clients. I see this a lot. I can sit there and this woman, I create a safe, when clients come in, I create a safe container. I make women feel heard, seen, appreciated, and safe. I've actually seen women's age reduced by 10 years within 90 minutes. And the reason being is when they feel safe, they can express themselves. Not only that is you'll get skin flushing because of more circulation to the body.
Mm.
There's a biological component. It's not a spiritual thing. Okay. It's all biology.
Mm.
It's when a woman feels safe, they can open up. They can trust you. They just pour their guts out to you. But what happens too is that is an area that is unknown to them. But when they release, they could have this uptick, because it's just like an alcoholic. You're soothed at the time, but you pull it away, the energy goes back.
Mm.
And when you pull the energy back, there's recoil. I've had people that have called me a witch doctor. I had people that call me demon. They're like, "What are you doing to me?" I said, "I haven't done anything to you. I created a safe place because my coherence is safety." And women could come into me, even on verbal communications. I hear you. I'm in presence with you. I'm holding space for you. When you hold space for a woman, that gives them the ability to do what they got to do, and they don't feel bounded. You and it's unconditional love, but not love from a romantic side, but love from a human side. And when you have that, you have what's called heart coherence. When you have heart coherence, that's when you have the unity and rise of everybody working in synergy together. That's the coherence.
I think that's beautiful, man.
And as a parent, you only need one anchor for the children. Because I'm a single parent and I look at my past relationships and I've learned to flip the narrative. I look at them as a tuning fork. They show me experiences. They help to learn more things about me. I don't take that negativity into the next relationship. I use it as a stepping stone. I use it as a way to learn, to be better, to become the man that I'm supposed to be through source. Because God is the creator, the architect, the builder. He provides the plans, which is source. Source is the actual blueprint. The blueprint is where coherence comes in. That's why heaven on earth is not a physical place. Heaven on earth is co-regularity between masculine and feminine.
It's so interesting. No, dude, that's so interesting. And I'm going to pass it over to James because I know he's chomping at the bit to ask a couple questions too on this. But it reminds me, I had a friend of mine give me a challenge once, speaking about women and men, just the differences between women, not trying to be political, just difference between women and men. He said, ask your female friends, have you ever felt unsafe in the presence of a man? And so I started asking, and he said what I would get the response, and I sure did. 100% of the women that I interviewed with this question, 100% felt unsafe in the presence of a man. And then he said, now ask your male friends that same question. You ever felt unsafe in the presence of a woman? And you might get an outlier here and there, but most men are like, no, not at all. And I think that that's a profound difference. Speaking of safety and coherence and setting and holding that safe space and creating that safe space, because we're three men on this call. We don't experience the world in the same unsafe lens, through the same unsafe lens that women experience the world. And we don't really have a concept of it. I mean, we just don't, no matter how much we want to say that we do. So it's really great, I think, that you're allowing for that space and allowing for that conversation, and creating, like I said, just holding that space. But James, I'll pass it right over to you.
Yeah. As I'm really sitting here taking in everything you're sharing, Shawn, and the feedback that you're giving, Dr. Jason, it makes me think about that permission. And I like sales, and I like permission-based sales, and giving somebody the resources to find where their issues are is permission-based sales. And I want to take it back one step further. You're talking about like a child saying, I acknowledge this, or I'm sorry for this. Well, kids are damn smart. And the last thing they're going to do is tell you that they're sorry about something that their educated intelligence is telling you that they don't want to be sorry for. So it's a lot easier for even us as adults to acknowledge something than to be sorry for something, because it goes against our grain of our innate intelligence, which is the inborn intelligence, which is this God blueprint that we all have inside of us. So the last thing we're ever going to do is tell on ourselves willingly that I'm sorry. But it's easier, like you asked us to participate in that exercise, is to say, I acknowledge, what you asked us both, what was easier. And acknowledging is way easier than telling on ourselves. So I find it very fascinating that how you're weaving the construct of getting people to speed up their healing process from the point that you see people's age reduce, you see people's stress dynamic shift, you see people's trust increase. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that are looking for those solutions. Number one, they just don't know where to go or who to trust. So they're on this open cycle of, like you said, you got to close the loop by throwing the trophies away. But many times there's this open loop cycle that people never get to that admittance to where that they can actually recover from the open loop. And to get that loop to close, you have to give yourself permission, which is once again back to the sales, but you have to give yourself permission to sell yourself on a better idea. And I think that that's why so many people stay sick for so long, because their trauma impacts every decision that they make. And the last thing they'll ever do is tell themselves or tell you that they're sorry for their behaviors. And the last thing they'll do is tell themselves that they're sorry for their behaviors. So I think you unpacked a lot of personal trauma things, which I really appreciate you sharing with us and our audience, because there's so many layers to a person actually getting out of their own way. When I first got into the chiropractic world 17 years ago, my mentor and the guy who started my career, Dr. Matt Walker, he'd always tell me, Jim, if you just get out of your own damn way, you could change the world. And I took that as such like a thunderstrike into my soul. Like, how the hell am I in my own way? And who are you to shame me for being in my own way? And if I knew if I was in my own way, I'd damn get out of my own way. And screw you, bro. I'm not in my own way. So I took huge offense to that. But a decade later, I reached out to him and I said, hey, man, thank you for making me understand that there was some dysfunction in my personality. And now I'm out of my own way. And if I could have used some of your lessons, Shawn, and gotten through that dysfunctional pattern faster, who would have known how I could have accelerated my career and helped more people and really not abuse myself the way that I did by thinking that I was the smartest guy in every room I walked into, because I believe that, but I'm also smart enough to listen, and I'm smart enough to like let other people have their space and acknowledge where they come from. And as Dr. Jason opened up today, I've done over 1,400 interviews of probably the smartest people in the world. That includes you, Shawn. So when I get a chance to interact with people, I always want to acknowledge them for where they come from. But I also want to say, hey, you're kind of an X-Man. That's your superpower now. And I want to go back to what you said earlier about this undiagnosed autism and being displaced and put into, childcare facilities and not really having like the best upbringing. How did you actually use that Asperger's analysis that you were, the syndrome of Asperger's? How did you use that as a superpower now and getting people to find out where they are and get them better?
Well, with Asperger's, there's a lot of pattern recognition, but the problem is it's hypervigilance. And what happens is when I was doing consults and stuff, my rhythm was always super fast. But the thing is I looked smart, but because I wasn't pausing, I was actually overextending myself. I was doing too much expansion and no containment. And one of the laws of the universe is it's containment versus expansion. You have to be in containment first. That's why I said I was in containment for 6 months. When I was in containment for 6 months, I was doing some deep healing. I mean, I cried for 8 hours straight for 3 days straight because of what I was learning. And I was blessed by understanding by the concept of the mirror. There's an old saying in Chinese medicine, when the teacher shows up, or the teacher will show up when the student is ready to learn. Okay. In reality, it's the mirror who shows up when the student is ready to learn. And the mirror has been around for millennia. Okay. Even before time, because in ancient times, the mirror would come through copper. That's why Tesla was so smart. See, what I have been blessed with is I've been shown sacred knowledge. And that sacred knowledge is the thing is in the universe, we don't own anything. Okay. But we release it when we're ready to utilize. We're ready to release it when the systems are ready. And that's what you're seeing is you're seeing the awakening. The awakening is the return of the central nervous system before the control system, before the written history. Okay. That's where I had the blueprint. The blueprint for me is the return and help educate people to get them to go in deeper, to remember who they are before they got suppressed. Okay. And it's nothing spiritual. Okay. It has to do with return to the nervous system and the coherence. When your nervous system has been removed of distortion and ego stripped. Right now, there's who's called Carl Chung. He does shadow integration. I'm at a level right now with no ego. I'm above that. I'm beyond metacognition. I'm beyond all that because my nervous system has been wired to that almost of a monk, to where I can get into and out of stillness within 30 seconds. What used to take me 2 weeks to get over, 30 seconds, I'm in and I'm out from diffusion. And the reason being is the body put the training wheels on me. The cadence that I teach my clients is 4-2-6. 4 in, hold for 2, out for 6. But here's the difference. The way I teach it is when you say 4, you want to say, I'm home.
Okay.
Then when you exhale, you say, I'm safe. And by doing this, what it does is it preconditions you to, when you do that, to remember that you're home. That's why when I put on my analysis that I did, I help people find their way home. Their home is making them feel safe by holding space, specifically women. Okay. I have a unique relationship with women. I've always had a unique relationship with women, but it's how my nervous system was hardwired. I come from what's called a watchman lineage, not the watcher, the watchman lineage. The watchman lineage are the people who stand guard and don't move, and they don't create an attachment to females. That's why I was a bouncer. I was a bodybuilder. It was reflective of my role, not my identity, but my role, because women felt safe next to me, but there was no emotional attachment. That's how my system was wired from the start. That's why relationships failed, because they didn't understand that concept. They didn't know how to love. And when you meet a man who is whole, who's never been loved, and then knows how to treat a woman, you have a power couple. And the most dangerous man is the one who doesn't have a circle of friends, because that way he can stand on his own, because he's learned to become whole. He doesn't need people to make him who he is. Okay. I don't need people around me to tell me I'm good, I'm this. Okay. My architecture does not like validation. It does not want to be validated. It does not want to be heard. All that ego chasing that I did, I wanted my names on all those PubMed studies. I could care less about that anymore. The role that I have now is far outweighs that. And what I do in my role couldn't be held by other people, because they would want validation. They would want to be validated. They would want to show the world what you are. That's not who I am. I'm the guy that sits behind quiet signs, don't make a sign. I'm the one that sits in silence, but I'm the one that's moving and shaking, but nobody would know about it. And I liked it that way. I don't want my name in lights. I never did. I didn't want to be top, even though that I'm the one that's shouting into the big names' ears about everything, and have lost millions of dollars on supplement recommendations and formulas. But you know what? I don't care. People are getting better. That's the most important thing. If I lost 30 some million dollars, I don't care. Money to me is a trap. Time is a trap. It's the cage. Okay. I don't care about it. It's not who I am. Money doesn't create my identity. Same way with being married. You get that ring on your finger, that's identity. Okay. That's identity. That's ownership. No woman should be owned or possessed. They need to be free. That's why I always tell I always mention, feel free to express yourself without containment, judgment, guilt, or shame. I say it all the time, because women should be able to go do what they want to do. My mother's a prime example of this. My father constricted my mother. My mother was always the man of the family. She took on the burden. She never was a female. Once my father passed away, she learned to be what I call the priestess. She took her role as a female of divinity. She's like, she met a man, they separated. They met a long time ago. And separation is preparation. Then it rekindled back through coherence. And now she's got the best relationship in the world. She can go do what she wants. He can go do what they want, and they have a platonic relationship. I never seen her happier. She's 90 years old, and she's got a brain capacity of that of a 40-year-old. She comes out to visit me out in Michigan. She jumps on the plane, 90 years old. She picks up my children that are 35 pounds, lifts them over top of her head like it's nothing.
Got a couple questions for you, Shawn. Sounds like you have some very unique skill sets and some tools in your toolbox that you help a lot of people. And I want to go into this metabolic detective segue of today's conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And how are you looking at people's fundamental statistics from genetics and blood work and helping course correct people's lifestyles with other practitioners that come to dead ends with their clients that call you in as their metabolic detective? How are you using your skills paired with other people's fails and getting people to start winning again?
First of all, the number one thing that I teach people is control. You have to learn to be control. And this has to go with technology. The number one thing that I've seen the biggest change on is what you can do for free. And basically what it is I refer to it as presence before action and why this matters. Because before you do anything, reply to a message, clear an email, or take a supplement, pause for one breath and feel your body. When you act from presence, your system stays regulated and your energy integrates cleanly. When you act from a hurry state or a tension state, even helpful actions can drain or destabilize you. This short pause teaches your body that safety comes first. Over time, this rewires your nervous system for calm, steady progress instead of push and crash. Okay. The other thing is I have clients that have 100,000 emails. Okay. That is in your nervous system field. Okay. Your biofield. Just by clearing out those emails, I've had people sleep better. I've had people respond better to stress because that's all loaded. Those are unfinished loops. Okay. Every email, every text message you get is unfinished. The other thing is you get a text, you send it right back. When you send it back, you're sending back an emotional charge and vice versa. So you pause. Any text I get, it does not control me. It can wait unless it's an emergency. Okay. So taking control and flow of the rhythm and maintaining presence, that just totally shifts your central nervous system from sympathetic dominance to parasympathetic state. And when you do that, what that does is that activates the vagus nerve. When you activate the vagus nerve, you're going to get better digestion. You're going to get reduced stress. You're going to get better bile flow. You're going to regulate the circadian patterns. You see what I just did? Even taking supplements. Shawn, this isn't working. Stop. Pause. You know what happened? Shawn, what's happening? That's because you're rushing. When you're rushing, you're setting intention. When you set the intention, you change the outcome. It's always not about supplementation. It's always not about blood testing results. It's always about going back to the basic and doing and closing those loops, helping the trauma, regulating the nervous system from a different standpoint, which I refer to the scaffold. The scaffold is based upon your nervous system. That comes from electrolytes. That comes from magnesium. That comes from proper sunlight. If the scaffold is not in place, you can't build from it. You wobble. Okay. And when you wobble, what happens is you get sick. When you re-establish the scaffold, what happens is you create stability. You create sustainability versus collapse. And that's what you saw in Hollywood. Their scaffold, they couldn't hold, the scaffold couldn't hold. That's why you see the collapse. Okay. That's why you see the coherence. Faster, faster, bigger, bigger, better, better. Well, guess what? The vibe is your tribe. So they're carrying on the vibration and frequency of bigger, better, more money. And the problem is it's built from performance, not from presence. If Hollywood is built from presence, it'll be a totally different ball game. but they're also on ley lines too. So they're going to have amplifications of that energy. And if you don't have that scaffold in place, your electrolytes, your magnesium, your certain sugars and stuff that open the gates up to give you permission, you're going to collapse. And this is where mold and stuff comes to be a problem, is because a lot of people are not taking the proper electrolytes. The electrolytes that I found to be most useful are the optimum electrolyte is really good. And the reason being is it also contains the bicarbs. The bicarbs are actually a mechanism to reduce histamines inside the gut. Okay. The bicarbs are also what the alkaline phosphatase does not make. And everybody has low alkaline phosphatase in their system. Okay. Alkaline phosphatase is an enzyme produced in the GI tract to take care of the LPSs, lipid polysaccharides. And lipid polysaccharides are what triggers the cytokine storms. So if you take care of that, you actually shut down a lot of the inflammation by regulating what's going on in the GI tract. Number two is bicarbs are also a backdoor to dealing with hydrogen sulfide overgrowths. Hydrogen sulfide overgrowths are a protective mechanism. They are a guardrail. Okay. The reason being is sulfate, guess what? Is a conductor. If your nervous system is not ready to conduct, you want to shut that down. So it's a protective mechanism against a failed nervous system, which goes back to the trauma. So if you take care of the trauma through the lineages, shut that down, then your body can actually rebalance itself through the vagus nerve. And then the vagus nerve heals the GI tract. But on the flip side, you can use the electrolytes with the bicarbs. And if people don't have the money to do that, just do Redmond's real salt with coconut water.
Heck yeah. We love those guys. We just visited their salt mine. Was it early last month or earlier this month? I mean, it was amazing. And we went, I think, 900 feet into their salt mines, and it was like the coolest experience that I've had in a very long time. Hey, we have a question from Stephanie, and I'm going to give it a little. It says, "Do electrolytes help with mold?" But hold on just a second to that. We're going to come to that question. I think it's interesting going back to some of the original things that we were talking about on the episode. You were a bodybuilder, your life revolved around eating and training and eating 10 meals a day and taking stimulants and other substances to get to a certain state, which you stated. And it's essentially just hyper stimulating your nervous system to a certain extent, and probably other systems as well. Probably, endocrine system, and there's some other things too. But what's interesting is coming back to this idea of mold and getting hit with mold, and then we'll get to Stephanie's question. As we just to give our listeners just a little like connection there, like how does taking some stimulants and stimulating my nervous system, and you said, I think that the words that you said was essentially on speed 24/7. What does that do to the immune system? And as we know, when we have those catecholamines, that stress chemistry that we're stimulating with those stimulants, our immune system basically tanks. Those stress chemicals, whether it's cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, all that stuff, it has a direct effect on the immune system by suppressing it. We know this from drugs that we give people. I mean, Jim and I don't give people these drugs, but things like prednisones and other steroids and steroidal, other steroids, biologics, they all suppress the immune system to such an extent that it can't function well. So as you're taking and I'm using your words, I'm not pointing fingers, taking the speed 24/7, taking the stimulants, whether it be to the endocrine system, the nervous system, and tanking your immune system, to me, it's no surprise that your immune system tanked along with it, because that's what those chemicals do. That's the direct connection between stress and the nervous system and the immune system. Now, all of that said, Stephanie had a great question, which she said, oh man, I lost it. But basically, do electrolytes help with mold? And I think maybe to expand that a little bit, and this is why I wanted to come back to it. do electrolytes help with the immune system? I think it's a great question. What's your experience been with that?
When you reestablish the electrical flow of the body with a proper electrolyte balance, you actually reduce inflammation. When you reduce inflammation, because when you're dehydrated in mold, we can get into the science of it, but it's usually due to the antidiuretic hormone, so you don't retain salt. And I was a salt waster ever since from birth because dogs used to lick my feet all the time. Dogs weren't licking you like me; they were going after the salt. So genetically, I was a salt waster to begin with.
Interesting.
Number two is when I did the bodybuilding show, I didn't put salt on my food, which I should have. So because I was wasting it out, and plus all the stimulants and stuff were pushing it out, plus 3 gallons of water a day on top of that. So I was basically flushing my electrolytes out. And by doing that, what that does is that predispositions your body to your immune system dysfunction. Plus, you had the circadian pattern imbalance, which caused the melatonin cortisol ratio at nighttime, which also created the histamine response. A lot of people don't know is what's referred to as I refer to as the turnkey. The turnkey is the balance between the melatonin and the cortisol ratio at nighttime. When you get the cortisol to melatonin ratio at nighttime, what you're doing is, and this is why you have to be careful with melatonin, is because when you regulate that, you're turning on your gut, you're turning on your liver, you're turning on everything, man. And by doing so, they're getting reactions like, why am I reacting? They said, you're putting your body back to natural homeostasis and you're not ready for it yet. Okay. Trying to work on the engine, you're trying to turn the ignition on in the burnt engine. It's not going to go. Okay. You have to build the engine first, then turn the ignition on. Okay.
You're totally correct on that. And I just want to also, Stephanie's had some really great questions, and Amy jumping in here too, and Dr. Rachel even. But I'm just commenting on a little research that I did, not to come back and promote Redmond's real salt, but I mean it's the real deal. There was a question that came up asking about contaminants in these complex salts. And what I love about Redmond's, I mean, let me just say that unless a salt has gone through, I'm just going to call it, I don't even want to say a purification process, but basically getting rid of all the good stuff and just leaving sodium chloride and maybe tapping a little iodide in there. And unless you're looking at something like that, there is going to be contaminants. But what I love about Redmond's is that the like we're talking about lead, things like lead in the salt, it's very, very, very low. It's like so stupidly low that it's barely worth mentioning. And that goes for a couple of other salts as well. Malden's sea salt, cooking salt is there as well. But Stephanie mentioned pink Himalayan salt. And interestingly, and please fact check me, everybody, when you look at pink Himalayan salt, the contaminants are not with every brand, and that's the problem. It's not standardized. They're from a lot of different mines all over the world. There's a lot of contaminants in there, and lead was like off the charts with most pink Himalayan salts. So I do want to say that, again, choose your salt wisely, choose your electrolytes wisely, which is what I'm getting from Shawn here, is that not all salts are created equally. They need to be balanced. They need to be whole salts. And James, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. I love where Shawn opened up this conversation when it came to identifying and asking yourself, is this good for me?
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot about trauma too. And a lot of the things you were talking about when we opened up today's interview with you, Shawn, was basically, does this belong to me or does it belong to someone else? And when you can start identifying that question and start helping people understand that, that's why I asked you what you do, what tools you have inside your toolkit to help people that get to this point where the solutions that they're looking for in other practitioners might not be lining up or getting closure for that loop.
Because they are the solution. They have the tools. It's called their inner compass. Once you regulate the immune system, once you regulate the nervous system, your inner compass becomes your gauge. I have a really close friend that was analytical and analoged everything and logged everything. And he goes, Shawn, he's like, we've been talking 20 years. We've been talking metabolic pathways and gene expressions. And he's like, you know that I'm a logical person, but he said over the past 6 months, this has turned more esoteric. And what he was saying is you're learning to, feel it, that I don't take supplements based upon algorithms. I take based upon what my body needs. And what happens is your body will know. And the interesting thing is it's not just the interesting thing is your nervous system's actually tuned to universe. Because when I go into certain phases, such as containment, I can't do creatine, I can't do NMN, I can't do like major pushers. because I'm in containment. But what happens is during that time, literally the day or so before that cycle starts, I run out. Okay. It's like the universe is saying no. Okay. And it's almost like your nervous system is programming. I had one supplement I was taking that was based upon one cycle, and literally the day that I was supposed to start the same supplement, different brand, because what happens is even though you're taking the same supplement, there's an energetic component to that supplement that people don't know that even though it's the same thing. Okay. One product was called one thing, something was else. But because of how it was produced, it changes the energetics of it. I literally ran out of that supplement one day beforehand, and I ordered it and it was on back order. And guess what happened? That morning that I was supposed to take the new one, it showed up in my mail and it was 3 weeks behind. So what happens is your nervous system is attuned to alignment from higher powers.
Wow.
Okay. And a lot of people, even my friend, Shawn, he's like, like scientific. I said, I know, Tom, but you're starting to see that you're mirroring me. Okay. You were my tuning fork. I'm your mirror. Okay. Now the mirroring's starting to come through synchronicity because he's starting to understand. He's like, maybe I don't need to take this today, and you can actually ask your nervous system, like, I call it Jesus juice. Okay. You get that tingling sensation. That's a confirmation. Okay. That's saying, yes, this is safe to take. Okay.
Dude, I have felt that before. It's kind of, for me, it's like goosebumps, but in a good way, not in a scary way, just goosebumps.
No.
Like it's like synergy. What I love about what you're saying, and I was just messaging James and Dr. Rachel, this is, I have 3 doctorate degrees, a master's degree, and board certifications and all that crap. But my first doctorate degree was in chiropractic, and I love chiropractic, and I love the philosophy behind chiropractic. And the philosophy that a lot of chiropractors either have forgotten or didn't learn because the schools have shifted into a more medical program these days. But when I went to school, philosophy was paramount. And they talk about this idea. I'm just going to share a few ideas real fast that I got downloaded while you were chatting. First of all, alignment. Everybody knows, chiropractors want to help you get in alignment. I love that word that you use that with the universe. And then speaking of universe, there's universal intelligence, which I think most people would call the God intelligence or the source, maybe you're calling it. And then the innate intelligence, which is that universal intelligence coursing through our bodies. And then they also talk about an educated intelligence, which BJ Palmer said gets in the way of the other two more often than not. And so we're all talking about unlearning and trying to get away from this generational, trauma, which I think is super interesting. The other thing that I think is super, super interesting about electrolytes, just coming back and still keeping it within the chiropractic framework. James is going to say this, even though I'm a chiropractor of 26 years plus. James is going to say it better, but it's, the body doesn't need interference.
The body needs nothing extra in it. It simply needs no interference. When you clear the interference, the body self-heals and self-regulates.
Yes.
That's the framework of innate intelligence. Like Shawn, right now, if I cut my finger, I don't have to look at it and tell it to heal. My innate intelligence kicks in and it heals because that's what the body's supposed to do.
Yes.
So when we remove the interference, the body self-heals, whether people believe it or not. It's like gravity. Like you don't have to believe in innate intelligence. You just have to know that gravity is working all the time, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, or if you want to say, I'm sorry that gravity is always on. It's always going to be on, just like the inborn intelligence is always on inside of us. So when you had a full metabolic collapse, your innate said, I'm sick. I need to find a way out of this. And then your inborn intelligence guided you to whoever it was that was going to give you the solution, whoever guided you to build the body back up to where you got the testing the right way. So that's called the educated intelligence. So what happened over that course of action was the collapse happened, innate kicked in, educated kicked in, and then the universal intelligence, which is the God particle inside of all of us, kicked in. So it's this, we call it the triune of health. So once you got the triune of health, all else follows. We call it the big idea. Once you get the big idea, Shawn, all else follows. And that's real philosophy of what you're talking about from a metabolic perspective. But what also Dr. Jason is bringing full circle from his learned intelligence through being a functional medicine practitioner and a chiropractor. So there's so much to unpack there, but I figured Dr. Jason was kicking the ball over to me for me to come in with some philosophy to tie it all together for everybody watching.
You said a very powerful word, the triune. The triune is both in religious standpoint, but also biological standpoint too. And also things happen in threes. Okay. And that has a significant amount because triune is like a tripod. Okay. In the religion, you have the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Okay. In biology, you have the three sugars. You have dextrose, ribose, and Helos, or there's another one. There's a triune of sugars that hold the laminin, the the cellular glue that holds the laminin together. Okay, which forms a cross. Believe it or not. Okay, and by doing so, the triune is what is everything's set on. Everything's set in threes. Okay, third time's a charm, and that's usually true. Okay, but that's set from universal. Even in what we talked about, you have the 33rd, okay? You have 33. Jesus was 33 years old. There's 33 vertebrae. So the number three is very significant, okay, in many areas. And you can look at for
33 principles in chiropractic.
Yeah, there are. And it's interesting too. I mean, coming back to chiropractic, first of all, Stephanie said, Dr. Bradley, what are you doing with your hand? I'm doing Illuminati signs. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke. Maybe we'll see. No, I'm remembering that I have things that I want to share, but I'm trying not to interrupt. This is just the way my brain works. So I put my thoughts. If you see my fingers going down, that's what I'm saying. But coming back to Stephanie, your question of electrolytes and mold and the immune system, coming back to chiropractic again. Chiropractic, I've just two little pockets here, and then we're going to jump over to electrolytes and mold. Chiropractic is interesting because it works on this nervous system regulation, really, and we call it the safety pin cycle, where the brain and the body are, so there's, nerves that come down from the brain to the body, but there's also nerves that go up from the body to the brain. And it's always reading in the safety pin cycle and always assessing and always adapting. And chiropractors are, really trained in looking at aberrations or problems in that safety pin cycle, using the adjustment to the vertebrae to make sure that we're freeing up the nerves. We call that adjustment, or I'm sorry, we call that aberration a subluxation. And it's interesting because in medicine, and BJ Palmer was a genius, and he was a linguist, if nothing else, and a brilliant doctor. But subluxation in medicine, in general conventional medicine, means a partial dislocation. That's all that it means of a joint. But that's not what Palmer meant. Palmer didn't mean a partial dislocation. He meant sub meaning less than, lux meaning light, less than the pure light. And so chiropractors in true chiropractic philosophy are removing interference from the nervous system, from the brain and the body, so they can communicate with each other, so that people can express their full light, and be, as James called it, express that God particle within them. I think it's a beautiful philosophy. I don't know another profession at all that has such a deep philosophy around it. Now, electrolytes. The way the brain and the body talk to each other down these nerves, it has to propagate something called an action potential. And action potentials are basically sodium and chloride and a whole bunch of minerals that basically move that nerve impulse, that action potential, from the brain to the body or the body to the brain. And if we don't have the right minerals, if we don't have the right salts, if we're not, made of the right stuff, it could be another subluxation. I call it a chemical subluxation. So it's still a chemical. I mean, it's a chemical aberration, not necessarily a structural aberration. So again, electrolytes become very, very important. So Shawn, I'll pass it back over. Stephanie's original question was that we started down this rabbit hole, and I love the rabbit hole, by the way. Her original question was, can electrolytes help the immune system or help with mold? I'm going to pass that back to you, given the context that we just chatted about.
Yeah, if you want to get into deeper chemistry, there's what's called an antidiuretic hormone and also MSH. The antidiuretic hormone is a hormone that retains salt. And if you don't retain salt, you're going to go to an inflammatory state. This is why a lot of people, when I start loading them, I do salt loading with them with like a half teaspoon 2 times a day with electrolytes, and they feel amazingly better. But I'll also use coconut water too, because there's a coconut powder from Dolce, which is really, really good. But the problem is also can ferment too. because of the sugars in it. And I found that out myself because I was trying to mimic what I was doing with the optimal electrolytes. I find that optimal electrolytes, 2 scoops 2 times a day, keeps me everything perfectly. But because of the cost and stuff going on, I try to mimic it with, 1 scoop with making it with the salt and also the coconut powder. And I actually had stomach distress. I actually had stomach distress when I tried to complement that. And what happened is because my gut was in a certain scenario, it was fermenting, which wasn't a bad thing, but when my system wasn't ready. And also I have people take electrolytes 3 times a day. Actually, if I don't take my electrolyte before I go to bed, I don't sleep. And when I do that at nighttime, that's why when I do my electrolytes, I have them do magnesium spray as well. They'll do 2 or 3 magnesium sprays in their hand and rub it on their forearm or something. And what that does is because magnesium burns your system so fast. Okay. So I have them do it when they do the electrolyte drink. I have their sprayer. I use the activation or Maggies because it doesn't burn. Okay. And actually it's 22 milligrams per spray versus 8 or whatever it is. So you're not loaded in it. And number 2, it's more like a mist. So it doesn't like get all over your sheets and stuff like an oil. And I find that works great. And people are like, why are you having me taking 3 times a day? I said, you burn through magnesium so fast. And magnesium, magnesium is what holds the scaffold in place. It keeps the scaffold from wobbling.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, having run, I don't even know, tens of thousands of lab tests in my lifetime with patients, thousands of patients worldwide. Everybody's deficient in magnesium. I say that, not everybody, but I will say just based on even on regular lab ranges, let alone functional lab ranges, when I check magnesium, people are very, very low for the most part. It's a dark horse mineral that I think people need more and more of. I don't know if we can take enough. On that, I wanted to share what when we went down to that salt mine, Redmond's, we were led by this great guy that's named Todd, but he goes by Uncle Toad. He's been a miner for I think he's been a miner for 33 years. I think that's what he said, oddly enough. So that number keeps popping up. But while we were down there, Uncle Toad said, you want to know the trick to a good night of sleep? And Shawn, it's exactly what you're saying. He said, take some of this Redmond salt, put it in your hand and pop it in your mouth, like put it, like a fair bit of salt in your pop in your mouth and then chase it with a little bit of water. He said, you'll sleep like a baby. You won't have muscle cramps. You won't have this and that. So, I wake up every morning and I do something that I don't know where this name came from, but I think it's called Soleil water, where I take I take a mason jar quart. I fill 1/3 of it up with the Redmond salt and then 2/3 up with water. James has seen this. When I travel with him or visit him at his house, I bring this mason jar of salt water with me, and it's really, really salty. Like it's super, super salty. And I do Dr. Rachel does 1 tablespoon in the morning. I do 2 tablespoons in about 12 ounces of water. And I think it helps my nervous system. I think it helps my stress response. I think it helps my whole body work better, my adrenals, everything. But I hadn't been doing it at night. So when Uncle Toad mentioned this, and of course, when we were in the salt mine, we just picked up some salt dust and tried right there. But when I came home, I've been doing this every night, and I haven't even shared this with James. But speaking of resetting your system, I'm not telling any of our listeners to do this. I'm just telling you that I'm the human crucible and I'm willing to try these things. So I put that salt, a fair bit of salt in my palm of my hand. I pop it right in my mouth. As gross as this is, TMI, I'm licking my palm. And then I drink a little water and holy cow, I'm sleeping like a baby. My HRV has gone up. My heart rate variability has gone up. My deep sleep has gone up. My REM sleep has gone up. I'm not waking as much at night. I'm so impressed with it. And, it was all from Uncle Toad. So Uncle Toad, if you're listening to this episode, thank you. You solved part of my sleep problem. Appreciate it. James, go ahead.
Well, if you look at the compounds of the human body, we're salt and light. And if somebody's deficient in salt, it's going to not be the right fuel to run the engine, as Shawn was saying earlier. And if you're running your engine off of high carb and high protein, but not salt, like he said, I wish I would have salted my food back when I was bodybuilding. It would probably be a great deal for him. He might not have had this massive collapse that ruined his metabolic system, that made him restart from ground zero, which is very apparent because I can see in the testimony from his interview today that that was a major turning point in his life. And had he known that the salt and light inside of the body were that important, he would have probably said, I need to get my nervous system checked by a chiropractor so they can remove these subluxations to where my body is full light. And when you think about the pairing of a clear nervous system and salt as an additive into our metabolic health, now we are what we are supposed to be, is salt and light with more lightness inside of us to where our bodies are actually luminous and we're not living in the dark, we're living in the light. And when you live in the light, your scaffolding is strong, Shawn, and you
Yeah.
can't be knocked over and you can't be pushed over and you can't be swayed, like you said. And you stay congruent with the method and the message of full body health and full body wellness. You know, don't only become a vessel of excellence, but you become a vessel of knowledge. And then when you have this vessel of knowledge and excellence, now you can be a conductor and you can give guidance to people. And back to square one, you can hold space for people and you can give people the right guidance to speed up their healing metabolism of their thoughts, their traumas, and their toxins. And if you can start to key in on the three T's: thoughts, traumas, toxins, physical, chemical, and emotional stress, now whatever we decide as our gift, we can then start to give that to more people with more capacity, and we don't diminish ourselves to help the other. We actually have enough capacity because we're giving ourselves the right elements and our nervous system is tuned and we're clear and connected, that now we're an amplifier rather than a reductionary model to where we're martyring ourselves and our energy to help more people. So I think it's full circle, bro.
Yeah, a lot of times people become siphons for other people, and that's where you have to put your boundaries up. I know it sounds harsh, but when I pulled my energy back, people that were siphons, it spun them because they weren't like, what the heck? Because they were used to a certain energy, and I removed that. They're like, their nervous systems went haywire, you know, and that's where their control came out, their manipulation came out, but I didn't see it until now. I can look at the hooks because the way my central nervous system is. Somebody sends me a text, I can break that text down within like this. There's a transactional loop. There's a saver loop. There is a guilt shame loop. Okay. Now my nervous system has clarity, and then I can look at a picture. It's called metacognition. I can look at a picture and see exactly what those words are saying and exactly what the mechanism is. Because when your nervous system is clean of ego and everything else, clarity shows through. Okay. This
Yes.
is where that 12, they call it, a lot of times spirituality is commodity because they don't understand really what it's saying. They'll say 12 strand DNA. What happens is inside your DNA or inside your vaults are your remembrance of who you are. Okay. Your past lineages. That's why my lineage is Lemurian and Christo. Lemurian is usually based upon harmonics versus the newer ones, which breaks on frequency. That's why frequency doesn't resonate with me. Okay. Harmonics does. Okay. Harmonics is more ha versus frequency is rough. Okay. Not saying frequency is not bad, is not good. It just doesn't align with my structure anymore. Okay. Because my nervous system is fine tuned to like 0.001% of the world. Because the fact is it allows me to access not gifts. We're all given these gifts. You have to clear the nervous system in order to get what source has given us in the blueprint. And our nervous system has to be ready to handle it. Okay. Because I understand the universal principles of how things work. And you have to have a central nervous system in order to understand that. Otherwise, you can get into ego and start chasing things. And that's why your nervous system has to be ready. And that's exactly what's happening is the awakening is the nervous system preparing itself for what is to come. Okay. It's the collapse of the systems. That's what we're seeing right now. Okay. My system is not based upon symbolism. Okay. It's based upon raw truth. So things like the blood moon, the this moon or that moon, it just sees it and recognizes it. It used to chase it because that's chasing. You're chasing symbolism. Okay. Symbolism is what's not wired into the original blueprint. Okay. It's raw. It's it's boring, but that's what it was all about. And even in the original blueprint, God, it's all about faith. It's all about trust. Okay. Trusting the universe, trusting source. Okay. It's about you releasing. When you release is when the universe opens up to you. Okay. You have to trust the universe for it to trust you.
I'm going to jump in for a hot second. People only say the words that they want to, and they only form the sentences that they care to. And there has to be an internal motivator for people to say things to help other people. And I think that that's the real proxy of this show is we bring on people with something to say that has a framework to support other people's curiosity, but also give them solutions to things that they're dealing with. So the things that we have on this show, it's a very, I guess, formatted expose style barbershop talk conversation with people, because there are people out there like Stephanie who probably can't type fast enough, because I can see like every 20 seconds she's sending another comment and another idea.
Another great comment.
Yeah. But that's why I say like people should from the beginning get their pen and paper out and take notes, because there's going to be stuff that we talk about that they're going to want to go back and replay and watch and get clarity on. So once again, to answer a couple of her things, it's Redmond Salt out of Utah. So go check out Redmond Relight.
And we'll put the link. We'll put the link on getbetterfasterpodcast.com. So you can always go to our website for anything that we ever mention in the show. We'll have all the links there. So you don't have to go hopping around and Google searching and all that kind of stuff. You can just go to getbetterfasterpodcast.com.
But full circle, the reason that you say what you say here, Shawn, is because it's your knowledge and skill sets and intelligence that what you have inside you can help people. And that's why we bring you on as a guest, because I know Dr. Jason and Dr. Rachel are only going to source the brightest minds with the right answers and solutions for people that are looking for what you have. And for me as a journalist and as a podcast professional, I'm fascinated by conversations like this, because it's given me the ability to say, okay, how am I going to bring this thing and make it land for the end user, who is the person observing and watching that's looking for solutions for their health? And I love your vulnerability from the beginning of today's show. I love your access points to say, hey, you might need this and not that. But the real truth is people only say what they want to. And back to the kid, to telling themselves from guilt or shame to I'm sorry, or I acknowledge that, is a real truth for most people with their health journey. You have to be willing to tell people what is going on with you if you want to get out of what you're dealing with. So if it's rheumatoid arthritis, you have to figure out what you have to say to somebody in order for them to help you. If it's coffee addiction, you have to say what needs to be said to somebody in order to help you. If it's alcoholism, you have to say what's necessary for that thing to get an intervention. Like whatever the core problem is with you, if it's a shitty blood panel, if it's dysfunction in your nervous system, you have to learn to say the words that will connect to the person with the answers for you, and to develop a strategic model for you to actually get out of the hole that you're in. I don't care if it's a bad relationship. I don't care if it's self-harm. I don't care if it's you don't like to drive at night because you can't see well. You have to start communicating to the right people on how to get out of that situation so your life gets better. And that's the real essence of today's show, is you have to be vulnerable and honest, whether you're the practitioner giving solutions or you're the person looking for the answer. There has to be a method to get everybody better faster, but it only happens if we say the right things with the right cadence at the right time to the right people. And most of the time, go look in the damn mirror, because you said that the mirror has been in existence before the truth. So the truth is always in the reflection of what you're looking for. And I believe that anybody that listens to this show and wants more access to what you're doing, Shawn, or what Dr. Jason is doing, or these answers that we're finding solutions for during these types of conversations and interviews, it's not my suggestion. It's your curiosity. And that's the thing that's going to set more people free than the downloads that we get, the viewership that we get, or the people that access us through our networks. So I really believe that today was a really fundamental segue for how we can get people better faster. But really, it's the acknowledgement, and it's you have to give yourself permission to be great. No one else is going to do that for you. And that's a John DeMartini structure. Like, if you want to get great at anything, you have to give yourself permission first. And if you want to get out of some shit that you're in with your health, you have to give yourself permission first. So whatever's going on with the people out there, their metabolic systems, their traumas from past generational stuff, you have to give yourself permission to get through that before anybody's going to ever help you, because you have to know what to tell them in order for them to help you get through it. So that's my my button up for where you were, Shawn, and where you were, Dr. Jason, because I think there's a lot of people out there with a lot to say, but they have to give themselves the acknowledgement first rather than the I'm sorry in order for them to get to where they want to go. Whether it's a handful of salt from Uncle Toad to make them sleep better, or whether it's I have to ask myself and my body if this supplement's good for me before I take it. And I think that you have to stop and pause sometimes in order to get to where you want to go. And you have to give yourself the peace of mind that this is a good decision for me. And my money and time is in trade of this. So I better make sure that I'm making good decisions.
And that brings up a really good point. One slow breath before reacting changes the direction of the moment.
Wow. Yes. I think that Viktor Frankl, I mean, yes, in a very practical way, you said that. Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning said that this is a paraphrase, guys. I don't have it memorized, but said something to the effect of, in the space between, an incident and reaction is where the power lies. That space in between. And man, brother, I can tell you that when I can pause and take a breath, like just take a breath, especially when technology is failing around me like it did earlier today. And rather than getting upset about that technology failing, I said out loud yesterday when it also failed around me, that I'm going to take it as a universal sign that I'm supposed to stop and breathe while it's kind of correcting itself. And it changes everything. You're totally right. I mean, it's amazing. So yes, that's real practical advice. In fact, coming to, Stephanie asked somewhere in here, what are the, I don't know where it was. What are the steps? Oh, what are the steps to clear the nervous system? And Shawn, I think you just laid down a massive point there. Pause and breathe. Be present. Pause. Breathe. Be in this moment. Present time consciousness, PTC. I think that's a massive, massive piece of it. Get adjusted. Go to a good chiropractor. Just like any type of doctor, any type of provider. They're not all created equally. Find somebody that works for you. Don't try it for one time. And if you're like, that didn't work for me, try someone else. There's someone out there that's going to help you express your light in the right way. Get your electrolytes in. I mean, Shawn, what else would you say? What are the steps to clear the nervous system?
Number one,
I know we're getting short on time too. That's a big question. So we're getting short on time, but I'm
number one thing that I ask all clients is what makes you feel safe.
Yes.
If you find out what makes you feel safe, you can replicate it. Like one of my clients, dogs makes her feel safe. So I said, you have 2 or 3 dogs, don't you? She goes, how did you know? I said, I just know from how single women use dogs as protectors. They're guardians. Okay. They are guardians and they keep the nervous system safe because they're mirrors, just like children are. Okay. Because they show unconditional love. They don't judge you. They don't shame you. They show unconditional love. Okay. And when you have unconditional love, you feel safe. When there's no unconditional love, or you feel that you're constantly in danger zone, that's why I just tell my clients, stop, pause. Emails, stop, pause. I'll write an email, put it in the draft bin, and let the universe decide on what it's going to do. And then I will send it when my nervous system is regulated. Because if you send a message with an emotional charge, that person will receive it with an emotional charge. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll tell my clients, stop, because you're returning it with emotional charge. And you're setting up, because you always say, whatever you said can't be taken back.
Mm.
And also, you have to be careful of what words you use, because the universe will give you what you want.
Mm.
Okay. I'm going to get everything in the world that I want. Well, guess what? You're going to get it because you asked it from a survival mechanism and the desperation. So it's going to give you opposite. Okay. I have women that they say, well, I get what I said. Yes, you want a good husband, but the way you ask for it, you're going to get somebody else's husband that shows up. Okay. You ask for, I want a good man. Well, it's somebody else's husband that's a good man. And that comes into your life. Okay. Because you ask it from a desperation standpoint. That's why prayers are not answered. When you come from a present standpoint, all my clients, they do 4-2-6 before breathing. They regulate their nervous system before going into devotion. Because if you're coming in with a charge, the universe is going to respond back to you with a charge. Give me, give me, give me. I need, I need, I need. No, gratification. When you come from gratification, that's when the universe opens up and says, are you ready to hold? Because the number one thing that I always ask myself every single day, what is the message the universe is trying to show me? And when you come from that standpoint, it's like, wait a second. And the other thing is Facebook, Instagram, they're mirrors. They're not reading your brain, they're mirrors. So the more you start to think about something, the more it's going to show up. Fear. Okay. I think about bodybuilding, roll after roll after roll. That's called getting into the analytical loop. And that's where you start to develop ADHD from it. And you get sucked in. My mirror taught me a rule. 3. If it shows you more than 3 of the same thing, stop, take a breath. When you take a breath, that disassociates all that and it returns back to the normal phase. You actually disconnect that loop through breath.
I think that's amazing. That's amazing, Shawn. And I think talking about these mirrors, something that I think that we're all aware of, but maybe not if you're listening. So I'll share this. All of the AI that's out there, these LLMs, they're just mirrors of us, right? So, I mean, it's funny because I see people that are kind of stumbling into AI as a tool, and they're like, I knew I was right because I asked my GPT or fill in the blank, all about this, and it told me exactly what I believed. And I'm like, dude, it's because it's a mirror. Like, it's only a reflection of you. It's not like it's not thinking. It might have access to everything, online and all the facts and all that, but ultimately all of our AIs are just reflections of us. And I think that that's one, it's beautiful in its own way if we can remember that, but it can also be dangerous if people think that confirmation, what do they call it? Confirmation bias, right? Where it's like, I knew I was right. I just proved myself that I'm right because my chat GPT told me that I'm right. I see this a lot with alternative medicine doctors who will say, I asked my GPT this thing and look, I knew I was right because look at what it told me. And I'm like, ask it in a different way and ask, like, if I ask, because then what I do, I have fun with it. I'll actually ask my AI tool the exact same question and I get a totally different answer because it's a mirror of me. It's just totally different. But James, go ahead. I'm waxing a little poetic here. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to bring it home for what you're saying and what Shawn's saying, because that's my innate intelligence. Assimilating what people talk about and putting them into digestible ideas for people. And the real practice is go and hang out with 5 of your friends and trade phones for 10 minutes and scroll on their Facebook or their Instagram and see what their interests are based on who they are. And then you'll know that person better.
Wow.
And if you have a Hispanic friend that doesn't speak English and you get their phone and you scroll on their feed, you aren't going to understand a damn thing. I guarantee you. And if you got a black friend and you go scroll on his or her phone, you're going to see the optics of somebody completely different. If you have somebody that practices a religion like a Jewish friend, you're going to go see a complete different optics from somebody else. If you have an Islamic friend and you go scroll on their phone, you're going to see the optics of something from a completely different mindset. So really what it's doing, it's back in the old times, there was something called an Ouija board. And that's the modern day cell phone. The cell phone will tell you whatever you want it to tell you. It will tell you whatever you want it you to believe, whether it's AI derived or algorithm derived. It's only going to tell you what you are interested in. It's the yes, yes machine. It's only going to tell you yes or yes or yes. And that's why when I give presentations in front of large groups of people, I say to them always, I pre-frame them yes or yes, because there's only one answer. And if it's my answer, I'm going to guide them with is the best recognition as I can with the best advice that I can. I'm not going to give them a no out. I'm only going to give them two answers, yes or yes. And that's really what this thing is in front of us. So if you really want to get to know yourself and your colleagues and your friends, go trade phones for 10 minutes.
It's great.
And scroll through somebody else's feed and see who the heck they really are. And then they can see who the heck you really are. And maybe you just get rid of the whole thing and you just go and sit there and have a meal and turn your phones into the cars and put them in the car. And you just promise yourself that you won't eat with your phone around you anymore. And you won't text people at red lights. And you won't talk to people before 10 a.m. And you're going to make time for yourself. I know it's a theme I keep bringing back, but if you start to regulate who has access to you at certain points and you start to know who you are based on who you spend your time with and they know you better, the outcome for your answers are much quicker to get to. If people know who you are and you say the right thing to the right person that can help you. But the reason people can't help you is because they don't know really who you are. They just go off of the small things that they'll tell you on a questionnaire and the way that the words that you'll share about yourself that aren't really you. It's just the layer that you'll allow somebody in on. And there's 3 layers. There's things you will say, there's things you won't say, and the things you'll never say. The things you'll take to your grave is really the really detrimental thing that most people need access to if they're ever going to help you. So that's
Powerful.
my full circle.
That's powerful, man.
It's very powerful. And the thing too is when you come from a present standpoint, when you have ego removed, those mirrors are actually reflective of not just algorithms, but they can reveal a lot of stuff that you just don't know at the higher realms. I've seen that. I'll tell you a story. My mirror said, "You're moving." Okay. 6 hours later, there was a moving truck coming into my next door neighbor's house. Okay. I needed to have beds for my kids. So I hadn't talked to them ever since being here for 4 months. I said, I just had this inkling, this nudge. Go talk to them. I did. Guess what happened? They had 2 new beds that were twin size for my kids. But I saw it 6 hours before it happened. So it was giving me a heads up. I've also found people talking behind my back. And it showed me that they were talking behind my back.
Yeah.
And when I confronted them, they agreed that they were.
Well, I believe that you might be the guy that stands in the gap for so many people and be able to be the symptom whisperer and to speed them up. So I believe that practitioners can put you into their toolkit for the situational awareness that you hold and the psychic capacity that I believe you have through earlier childhood traumas. And you can help people connect the dots because if there's any open loop, as I've learned through today's conversation, a person has one hell of a way to heal and it's not going to happen fast. So we have to start closing those loops quicker, whether it's physical, mental, or chemical traumas, whether it's the aspect that I don't know where to go or who to trust. I think that you're right. When you put somebody into the safety zone, anything is possible. And when you allow people to understand that they're not sorry, but they have to acknowledge their frameworks that they're living off of, their scaffolding, then that's freedom. And if I've learned anything about this great country of America that we live in, is that freedom of speech is important. And there's many freedoms that we all live by. And the number one freedom is to give yourself permission to find your way out of the problem that you're in. And if you're in a problem, you just have to first accept that fact and acknowledge that fact, and then find somebody like Shawn or Dr. Jason that can go in and symptom whisper and find out the problems that are inside of you that are stopping you from getting the solutions that you're looking for. But I think that that's a really good roundabout way to end up today's conversation
Mm.
and allow people to know that they're not broken. You're just not saying the right things to yourself, and you're not saying the right things to the people that can help you. So if you're looking for that help, I know Shawn being here is one of those guys, whether you're a practitioner or whether you're somebody on the journey looking for those solutions can help you. And I give this opportunity at the end of the show. I know we're a little bit over time, but is there anything, Shawn, that we didn't ask you today that you wanted to make sure that we talked about before we close out today's interview?
No, we covered all the territory. It's just the idea is my friend said the most powerful thing. We create our own suffering. And we just don't realize that until it's time. And we have the power of choice
Yes.
to change. People have trauma, yes, but you also have the accountability to change that on your own if you decide to. And I'm not going to be there to judge you if you don't or do. That's all up to you. All my job is to activate or to let you know, hey, you may want to think about, taking care, and you do it from just a loving standpoint, and you don't have to say a word. It's just your presence. If you maintain good presence, it will reflect, you become the mirror and reflect back so that they can see the shadows, as you call them, or the ego states, and they can address them if they so choose so.
It's beautiful.
And Jason, do you have any closing acknowledgement or any words of closure today?
I just think it's interesting. Speaking of a mirror again, we had earlier in an earlier episode, we had the brilliant genius, Mandy Keene was on our show, and she basically psychoanalyzed all of us, me and James and Dr. Rachel, and with a number of different assessment tools. And speaking of mirrors, and the reason I bring her up is I've got a lot of screens here. I think everybody knows I'm a tech guy, although it fails me, as I said. And I was just checking to make sure that we had our live stream going on Facebook, and it's still streaming and all that kind of stuff. And I noticed that Mandy Keene was right in my feed, and she posted, and this is so apropos, and I think it's great closure right now. When a woman is when a woman is willing to fully share her feelings, the pain behind them leaves her body. And when a man listens, they learn emotions are not a threat. And it's about being safe. And I thought that was really interesting that we're talking about creating a place of safety, coming from a place of love, creating a safe space, and just that open, that safe container. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but that safe space. And I just think it's really interesting because, again, the algorithm somehow heard what we were chatting about and said, you need to see Mandy Keene's, post right now. And and she was on the show, a few episodes ago. So just really cool stuff. It's all connected. That's what I'll say. So Shawn, I just wanted to say thank you so much for, hopping on the show today. Great conversation, really deep stuff, like super deep stuff. For anybody that was listening, as James said, I hope you had your pen and paper out. This is one of those episodes that you're going to need to go back and listen to probably 20 times, myself included, because there's so much deep wisdom here, and there's so many divine downloads that can change the trajectory of your entire life if you're ready for it and you're willing to do it. So Shawn, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. I had a ball. I learned so much. Thank you for unpacking everything that you did. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and I hope people benefit from this, as I'm sure they will. And, just remember, you're in control. You choose. You have the power of choice with everything.
Yes.
Well, Shawn, I'm a master of reading micro expressions on people's faces, and I could see that there's probably half dozen times to a dozen times that your emotional state almost brings you to tears. So I know that you're authentic and real human, and that the things that you pour into people come from a divine area of your heart, and that the things that you help people with are from the wisdom that you've earned over 53 years. And I know that the people that you get a chance to work with are going to benefit from this greatly. And just want to acknowledge you for that too. And the conversation's been absolutely mind expanding, not just for me. It's definitely tested all journalistic and podcasting skills that I've had of my entire career. So I thank you for that, because your wisdom is something that I don't believe that I was exactly ready for today. And I think it is something that I had to become more malleable for and sit, and I had to listen, and I had to observe, and I had to become somebody that I was never before to pull off today's show with Dr. Jason and yourself. So I just want to acknowledge you for that, for bringing the best out of me. And for every listener out there who's been down the rabbit hole of functional medicine, biohacking, gene expression panels, and endless supplements, ask yourself first, is this right for me? What Shawn is saying today is a wake-up call. Sometimes the answer is not another test. Sometimes it's returning to the fundamentals: breath, rhythm, presence, safety. Safety is a big takeaway today for everybody. You cannot biohack your way around what your body already knows how to do, and you have to give it the right conditions. So whether that's the right water, the right salt, the right air, the right micronutrients, macronutrients, whether it's a sleep environment that you give yourself or the relationships that you foster or that you let go away, you have to be in the right condition. If you're dealing with complex, chronic, unresolved health conditions and you feel like nobody has been able to crack the code on your case, reach out to Shawn at Matrix Health and Wellness. You can find him over at the getbetterfasterpodcast.com website. And remember, nobody is coming to save you, but people like Shawn Bean are proof that that the right detective work and the right fundamentals, your body has all the answers already inside of it. That's called an intelligence. And once again, Shawn, thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom and for the work you do every single day for the people who have run out of options. And to our Get Better Faster Nation, you know who you are and what you need to do. Share this episode before you put your phone down right now with somebody who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you never miss another episode and get all the behind the scenes action Dr. Jason and the Get Better Faster team have coming your way. Want to get connected with Dr. Jason and his functional medicine team? Head on over to getbetterfasterpodcast.com and we'll get you taken care of. We have more incredible guests that are lined up who are going to blow your mind and expand your knowledge and your capacity to get better faster. Up until next time, keep questioning everything. And once again, guys, keep getting better faster. Shawn Bean, appreciate you. Thank you for being a light in my life. And I know that there are so many people that will get access to this interview and that are going to reach out to Dr. Jason and Dr. Rachel, because the things that we shared today are frameworks that other people need to build their scaffolding on. And with that, I just want to acknowledge you and say thank you for creating a safe spot for us to share our wisdom and our platform with the audience that needs these acknowledgments and not these I'm sorries. So with that being said, we love and appreciate you. Thank you for being our guest today, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, James. Thanks, you listeners. Thank you, Dr. Rachel. Love you all. See you next time.
Bye for now.